Next, we have Ron Aberizk, who is a sales manager for New England for Hess Corporation, which is our natural gas program supplier. Ron started with Hess in 2006, and he has managed the Power Options account managers on the natural gas program since 2008. He's been a great partner. He's here to talk about some solutions on the natural gas side for you.
Good morning. Thank you, Wendy. So what I'm going to talk about, as the title says, altering your usage profile to position yourself for lower energy costs. Natural gas is a lot different than electricity when it comes to some of the things that you're able to do to alter your profile. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take a look at some of the foundational basics of how natural gas is priced. Not so much looking at swing and things of that nature, but we're going to talk about how gas is mainly a seasonal product. It's traded on the New York Mercantile Exchange. November through March is your winter season. April through October is your summer season. And that seasonality typically is what will affect not only the NYMEX, but also your basis component. So, two components, basis and commodity. The basis, as many of you know, because I know you're participating in the gas program with Power Options, is the transportation of the gas from the source to the city gate, which for the most part over the past many years has been the Henry Hub in Louisiana. However, as of late, many of you may be aware of the Marcellus Shale and how we're bringing gas now from the western part of the U.S., Pennsylvania, and places like that. But for the most part, your basis is that transportation from the source to the gate of your utility. So where is your gate on the pipeline? New England and Massachusetts essentially are on two major pipelines, the Tennessee and the Algonquin pipeline, but they're somewhat at the end of those pipelines. So in times of heavy demand, you'll get constraints on that pipeline, which historically will make the winter more expensive, although we'll look at a chart that will show that sometimes winter is not always more expensive than the summer. And this can also lead to volatility as well. Again, the commodity traded on the New York Mercantile Exchange can sometimes be affected by many things, speculation, weather, major events in the world or in financial markets. And typically, this will also trade higher in the winter months due to the demand that is created during the cold season of the winter. So this is a chart of the historical NYMEX settlements. I only went back as far as January '07. I could have gone back another, 5 or 6 years. But as you look at this, you can see back in, January of '08 into mid '08 when we had the big boom in the real estate market and then the subsequent second depression, as some people have called it, how the NYMEX just plummeted down to, just below the $3 range. And when you look at the last several months, you can see how it's sloped off. We're probably, we're at 10-year lows. Many of you have probably read much about that. So the thing about the NYMEX and natural gas is, history does not always predict the future. So, having been in this business a long time, we've seen people who hedge their gas because they have a fear that it's just going to keep going up and going up. The old adage, what goes up must come down, is certainly true. But the point is, you really need to pay attention to what's going on, use any market information that, you can be provided on our website or through any other means of literature to understand what's going on in the world or in the market that could be affecting the natural gas price. So you can see the winter, we had one of the warmest winters in history. So when you look at those prices, who would have ever thought that you'd be paying, $3, $4 gas in the winter? So let's look at some of the profiles that you can have in any number of businesses. We have commercial heat, which you can see the peaks in the winter, slopes down not to zero, but the values were very low on this example that I'm going to be talking about. The pink, you've got a very flat load, 24/7 profile. Production uses gas for their production, very flat. Single shift process heat, again, peaks a little bit in the winter, drops down in the summer. And then you have an asphalt plant, which is actually a bell curve because they're not really using anything in the winter. They're not operating in the winter, but they're using a lot of gas to heat the aggregate in the summer months. So if we look at the numbers, and these are just the numbers that we use to plot that graph, We can start with the asphalt plant, which this chart is based on 90,000 decatherms a year. The only thing that's really changed on it is the way the people or the entity has used their gas. So the asphalt plant, 90,000 decks a year, not really using too much in the winter. They start ramping up in February. Maybe they get a couple of warm days where they can start doing some operation. And you look at their basis cost, just about 75 cents. If we look at the 24/7 process, which is the next, the next highest basis, flat load, 7,500 all across the board. Looking at the single shift with some heat load, again, it raises it a little bit. Still seeing some increases in the winter, but it does drop down significantly in the summer months. So what you have is the same amount of volume of gas being used throughout the year, but these are weighted average prices. So if you're not using any gas in those higher priced months of the winter, you're spreading the cost of those decatherms over much lower priced months, typically much lower priced basis as well. So you're going to come out with a weighted average basis price that will most likely be less. The highest one, commercial heat load. Not using a lot in the winter. All about the heat. And you can see, so they're spreading their 90,000 decatherms mostly across their highest months, highest cost months. So inevitably, they're going to end up with a higher basis cost. Now, if you look below at the NYMEX line, you may be asking yourself, well, why we pay, that's strictly the NYMEX, why is the NYMEX higher for the asphalt plant in the summer? You would think that maybe it would be less. These prices we used the NYMEX on April 19th, and at the time, actually the summer months, we're trading a little bit higher than the near-term months, and that's just simply a weighted average of the NYMEX to the load that you're seeing there. And then at the bottom, that's your total fixed price. So in looking at some of the things you can do, with natural gas, it's different. You can't put sensors in the hallway to turn off the lights. You can't put up a generator that's going to take you off of the grid and maybe, fuel generation that way. But what you could do, perhaps, you may want to consider a gas absorption chiller in the summer. Now, if that's going to add load to your summer, but it's still going to add decatherms. So you may not really end up with a lower price overall, but you will flatten your load a little bit. So maybe by doing some things like that, you'll bring that commercial heat load maybe closer to a single shift process with some heat load, spreading those decatherms throughout the year across all of the months, particularly adding or moving some of them into those summer months where gas is typically cheaper. So we talked a little bit about how can you affect your profile. The main thing is, as Al alluded to, as much as the cheapest kilowatt hour is the one you don't use, it's the same thing with the decatherm. If you can implement efficiency into your building or into your process, that's going to help you save overall on your costs. Level off your usage, or actually, move it from those higher cost months into some of the lower cost months. Maybe you can get into efficiency boilers. Make sure you keep those boilers clean. Cleaning the tubes of the boilers and keeping them running as efficiently as possible. Those are some things you can do from the natural gas standpoint as well. We talked about the absorption chillers for cooling in the summer. And we're going to save questions till later. So thanks very much for your time.